To Senator Sanders, the ranking member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. McMahon, nice to see you again. Let me begin by thanking teachers all over this country. This is a very difficult time to be a teacher. And talking to teachers in Vermont, and I think teachers all over the country, what they are telling me is they are spending a lot of their times not only teaching math and English, but dealing with the emotional needs of kids. Because among other things, our kids are struggling in many, many ways. So it's a tough time to be a teacher, and I want to thank the teachers very much for the extraordinary work that they are doing, especially for some of the most vulnerable kids in our country. You know, way back in 1863, as we recall from our history books, Abraham Lincoln was in Gettysburg. And he looked out on a field where soldiers by the thousands had just died in the struggle against slavery, and he talked about the need to maintain a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That was that short but very powerful Gettysburg Address. And I think in this country today there is a growing fear that instead of having a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, we are looking at a government of billionaires, by billionaires, and for billionaires, whose job is not to improve life for ordinary people, but to make the people on top even wealthier. So in the midst of massive income and wealth inequality, where 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, the Republicans in the House yesterday introduced a budget resolution that would provide massive tax breaks to the people on top, and they would pay for those tax breaks for billionaires by cutting Medicaid, education, and programs that working families throughout this country desperately need. That is exactly the wrong thing to do. At a time when millions and millions of working families are struggling, our job is to protect those families and not worry about the billionaires who have never had it so good. But it's not just cuts in Medicaid, as devastating as that would be. We're looking at, if the Republicans get their way, massive cuts to education. And I should also say that the people who are trying to privatize Social Security, privatize Medicare, privatize Medicaid, privatize the Veterans Administration are precisely the same people who are trying to privatize public education in America. We must not allow that to happen. In America, we must not allow our educational system to become a 2-tier system, a system which says that if you have the money, you got to get help from the federal government, you got to get a voucher to send your kid to a school that may cost $50,000, $60,000 a year, while the public schools will end up being segregated not just by race, but by class. Most families in America do not have $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year to send their kids to private schools, and it's absurd to provide public money to make that possible. Our job is not to take away money from public schools to give it to private schools. It is to strengthen public education in America. Further, President Trump has talked about abolishing the Department of Education. Yes, I think everybody on this committee wants to see us go after waste and bureaucracy in every agency of government. But what we must understand is that when we talk about the Department of Education, they are providing vital resources for 26 million children in this country who live in high poverty school districts. Is it the responsibility of the federal government to say that every kid in America, whether you're poor, middle class, rich, gets a quality education? It is. And that is what a lot of what the Department of Education does. Department of Education provides millions of public school students who have disabilities, emotional problems, physical problems, provides them with help. It provides Pell Grants and other important financial assistance that over 7 million low-income students need to get a higher education. So the goal is not to abolish the Department of Education. It is to make it more effective and to make sure that it addresses the educational needs in this country. Mr. Chairman, in my view, we need a Secretary of Education who understands that in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, we should have the best educational system on this planet, from child care to graduate school. We need a Secretary of Education who understands that we're going to attract the best and the brightest to the teaching profession. You know what? We have to pay teachers the kinds of salaries that they deserve, which is why I've introduced legislation that says no teacher in America should earn less than $60,000 a year. We need a Secretary of Education who understands that schools do not end at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. We need strong after-school programs. We need strong summer programs. We need a Secretary of Education who understands that we've got to invest in mental health. We need a Secretary of Education who understands that we have got to fully fund the Individuals with Disability Education Act. So there are a lot of questions I have for Mrs. McMahon. I very much appreciate her being here and look forward to the discussion we'll have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.